So I want to bring in my next guest, the man himself, Esteban Carrillo. Esteban Carrillo is a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist currently writing for the did I say that right? As an Ecuadorian journalist, I'm sorry, currently writing for The Cradle. He was previously with Telesur English, and I think initially it was Beirut based.
I
The
was.
Cradle is a fantastic outlet. I know I say it every time you come on. I say it because I mean it.
Thank you so much.
You,
Always grateful.
DD Geopolitics, you guys have been doing fantastic work in your coverage of what has been taking place on the ground. Um, I've shown the audience the the bombings that have been taking place.
Mhm.
I think Dimitri called it justice. The way that he was looking at it, like people are just playing saxophone in the background, some people are watching doing popcorn.
Oh my God, Lebanon, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Give me your take on this. I mean, you lived in Lebanon for a while. What is it to them to watch Israel get pounded in its cities, effectively looking like Gaza in some places?
It's I call it a bittersweet thing, right? Because just like the people in Gaza is the same, right? Or in the West Bank, you've been
Yeah.
suffering under the thumb, under the boot of this genocidal regime for so long. You know, in Lebanon in particular, they're still occupying the south. They bombed Lebanon about a week and a half ago, the suburbs of
Mhm.
Beirut. The aggressions are not non-stop. So to see a measure of revenge, or I think justice is actually a
Justice.
proper word than
I like justice.
revenge, because
Justice.
yeah, you know, like when
Yeah.
you commit a crime, you're supposed to face justice, and these are crimes. These are all
Yeah.
crimes. You know, the crime of genocide, the crime of aggression, the crime of displacement, the crime of using starvation as a weapon of war, of targeting hospitals and news stations, and schools. I mean, we could just sit here and list all the things Israel is guilty of. For Lebanese, these are people that are used as, and this is, again, the bittersweet part of it. They're used to war. Unfortunately,
Mhm.
they're used to war, internal war, civil war, war against the entity, war against ISIS. It's a never-ending cycle. So in a way, you grow accustomed to it, right? I mean, many people in Lebanon, many of my co-workers who remain there, they have, in one way or another, developed PTSD. They have,
Yeah.
they are depressed. They are kind of barely hanging on in different senses, because you cannot imagine, like Jamal, neither you nor me really, or I would say many people listening can really imagine what it's like to live under the constant fear that a missile is just gonna down the building next to you, and more than that, that is going to remain in impunity, right? That nobody's going to do anything about this, that the world is literally sitting on its hands, just watching and shrugging its shoulders and being like, well, Israel has a right to defend itself, even though that's, at this point, the phrase Israel has a right to defend itself is essentially incitement to genocide. It should be treated
Yeah.
as such. But but the Lebanese at the same time, they are fun-loving people. There are people that love their country, and they are people that have grown in many ways accustomed to live under this situation, under crisis after crisis, economic crisis, political crisis, military, etc. You name it, they have lived through it. And yet they managed to survive. They managed to stand up. They managed to go party, right? There was this meme a few days ago going around in like Lebanese circles, that was like a bill for a bar, and it listed
Mhm.
the different items. At the very bottom, it said like a missile sky view lounge, and it added a little surcharge for having the view of the missiles that were flying all the way to Israel. So it's kind of that back and forth that exists, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You learn to laugh about the situations, even though it's truly horrific. Like right now, if full-blown war breaks out between the United States and Iran, Lebanon's literally going to be caught in the middle, right? And now
Yeah.
with Al Qaeda next door in Syria, uh, there's going to be absolute impunity for whatever they do, for whatever Israel decides to do in Lebanon, which they have always used as a bit of a punching bag, right? As a revenge for
Yeah.
anything that they cannot achieve. They either take it out on Lebanon or often also the Palestinians. The Israelis
And
have
Gaza.
several punching bags to take out their frustrations in.
And by the way, they're doing it now. They've been doing massacres day after day after day. It puts it honest to God, puts me in the mind of the Nazis. Like when, oh, I'm sorry, I'm still here. There we are. It puts me in the mind of the Nazis in many respects. When Hitler's war machine is being smashed, and he is still putting metal materials, iron resources into death camps. And it's like, dude, you need those guards to help you fight back, but not fight back the Soviets. You need those materials to help you build your war machine. And yet he's like, nope, we got to exterminate the Jews. Got to exterminate the Jews. It feels like that, where they're like, we have to exterminate the Palestinians. And it seems like they're taking, I can't even show the images because I don't want them to shut my channel down if I show them, because they're gruesome. You have bodies just strewn all over the place. People holding their dead kids, other situations where people are holding their parents. One kid, his goat or donkey effectively fell because it was dying of starvation. Like, this is the scenes that the people are living through day after day. People who are going to get food being shot at and killed for going to get food. I mean, they massacred like 100 people the other day. I think it was like 60 or 70 today by itself.
They
And so it's
massacred,
almost like,
they massacred about 400 since they started this scheme.
that's what I mean. Like, meaning they are taking out their vengeance on the Palestinian population, the vengeance that Iran is distributing upon them. They're not accustomed to taking this level of shots and bombs and having their cities in rubble. They're not accustomed to this. I can show you videos where these guys are fighting at gas stations because for the first time now they have to, they don't have enough gas or fuel because Haifa was blown up. I can show you Mossad building blown up. Meaning Iran, I was having a back and forth with Daniel, and he pointed out, well, there are more people that died in Iran. That's because Iran is not trying to murder civilians, whereas Israel are. Meaning Israel is hitting hospitals, like, meaning they have no issue hitting non-military targets to maximize the number of people that die. For whatever reason, Iran has decided to show restraint. That is not indicative of winning anything. That's just you being a bloodthirsty sociopath. There's a difference in those things. Give me your take on just like how this has unfolded up to this point, and how do you think this is going to evolve? Give me your thoughts.
Well, as you said, Jamal, the Israelis did not expect the ferocity of the attacks, and I guess the failure of their air defense systems up to a point, right? Because the majority of the projectiles have been actually shot down. According to the Israelis, I think it's like a 90% rate of downing them. And yesterday I saw them saying that only 35 Iranian missiles made it through, which, take it with a grain of salt. They're currently, imposing very severe military censorship on any images about the attacks. So it's difficult to tell, right? And they are the same people that will, say that the UN is Hamas. So but the Iranians have obviously shown a capacity to strike strategic targets, including, as you said, right, the Haifa oil refinery, which provided about 60% of Israel's oil up until a couple of days ago, and same, for other places. I think there's also the Israeli claim of achieving air superiority over Iran, which I do think is true. Iran, their air defenses, it's difficult for a country that has been sanctioned for so long and that doesn't really have an air force to be able to develop systems that can, overcome the combined prowess of Israel, the US, the UK, the biggest empire in history. So they have, from what we have seen and we have heard, they have managed to destroy several of their air defense systems. They have managed to destroy several of their launch platforms. The Israelis claim they have destroyed missile depots. I'm not, we have no confirmation of that, but we do know that they have destroyed several launchers, which also explains why kind of the intensity of the Iranian attacks go, a bit up and down, back and forth in the first few days. Yesterday, the Washington Post had this report that was very interesting, in which they talk about that both sides are essentially rushing to not run out of missiles before the other. In the case of Iran, to not run out of the ballistic missiles that can cause damage in Israel, and for Israel's side to not run out of interceptors, which is
they got 10 days.
Exactly.
They have 10 days apparently. Yeah.
They have they said I think 12 or 13 days that they have at most. And it's not just Iron Dome batteries. The Iron Dome is meant to shoot down Hamas rockets or Hezbollah rockets. They need the Arrow system. They need the David Sling. and they need the U.S. The THAAD, right? This one that shoots things in the atmosphere. So this is gonna continue at the intensity that they can manage, until the other side essentially has to change strategies. And Netanyahu himself said, this is gonna last weeks. Trump has said something similar, and the Iranians have said we are just gonna continue doing this until we punish the Israeli entity, right? Like Khamenei yesterday, he says, his messages continue to be stronger day after day. So I imagine that this is gonna continue in this way, and then at some point, if Trump decides to, just jump head first into this war, then the concern is going to be the bases, right? And Iran has capacity to start hitting bases because they're also close to their border that they don't need, the high bar missile or the Fatah 1 missile that does all of these maneuvering before reaching Israel. They need like their simpler missiles just to start raining down death and destruction on U.S. bases. And that I feel that's the way that it's going to evolve.
I think that is terrifying because I agree with you. I think you're right. I think Trump is going to get involved. I think that seems to be clear as day. I think part of the plan was for him to get involved. And I know, I ask these questions often, what's in Trump's mind? And I know people are like, dude, it doesn't matter. It matters to me because I'm just curious, right? Like, they're right in the sense that empire moves in a particular direction. But there's several things that work here. There's this idea that, okay, well, these guys got into an air battle where Iran had missiles going back, expecting to fight a war with the US for like 20-something years. And so they have missiles that had just been lined up. So we have no idea how many missiles they have at their disposal. We do know they've been preparing for the US for 20, 30 years. We know that much. On the other front, the number of air defense that the US can make is limited since we've given so many to Ukraine right off the bat. And they've even had to shuffle items from Ukraine to Israel. Okay, even if you can shuffle air defense to Ukraine, you still have this issue of the missiles themselves, what you have a limited supply of. And oftentimes you're even pushing other governments to give Ukraine some because you don't have them, or at the very least, you don't want to give up the ones that you have for your own security. The THAAD system is limited in and of itself. The number of launchers in and of itself, and the number that they can make per year, meaning there is a limited number of these things that they have at their disposal to fire off. And so Israel gets involved into a war with a limited supply. Either they believe we're going to knock them out in one go, in which case this first initial attack is going to pacify Iran, or they knew they were going to get into trouble. And in getting into trouble, even if you get X hundreds of Israelis dying, that ultimately you're going to beg the US to get into the war, in which case the US was going to do it. Whichever one of those it is, I don't think it really matters. Ultimately, both of them end up being the same thing. And so I agree with you. The US is going to get involved. They're going to bomb Iran. Potentially, Iran is going to attack US bases. And we're off to the races.
Exactly.
I think we're off to the races. Give me your take on Russia, China, and some of the other factors, like Pakistan, for example.
Okay, actually, let me just add something to your thoughts right now, which is these reports that, first of all, Pete Hegseth has essentially given operational command of whatever happens to Eric Kurilla, the CENTCOM chief, who is like an Iran war hawk, complete Israel, Zionist fanatic. And, this is this goes hand in hand with the situation with Tulsi Gabbard, right? And it also speaks about... no, there was this also this other report I read yesterday on responsible statecraft, in which they talk about the window. Remember the window that the Israelis were talking about, that the window is closing for us to attack Iran or to cause damage. Apparently, the window was referring to Kurilla's retirement, because he's set to retire this summer.
That's it.
So this is what they meant by the window is closing. They meant the CENTCOM chief, who is going to do whatever we ask of him, is about to retire in a few months. It wasn't like in a few months they're going to finally have a bomb, or they're going to be able to like reinforce their mountain base. No, it was a U.S. general is about to retire, and we need to strike before that. That's essentially what happened. And now Hegseth gives this guy Kurilla, outsized command of whatever goes next. And we know that for a fact, it's just a matter of time before the U.S. is stuck in this war. as far as the other side, well, Russia and China have kind of incrementally been harsher in their comments, right?
Mhm.
They have referred this to as an unprovoked Israeli aggression. They have condemned it. They have said that this is going to sink the region into war. I do not see China, in particular, eager to join the battle. They are doing their own thing, in a
You
way.
mean with military?
Yeah, yeah, like
Agreed. Agreed.
exactly. No, and if at most, I would imagine they're gonna maybe, or they probably already have transferred, some
Yes.
systems. For Khamenei in particular, I remember a few months ago, for Khamenei, they sent like these laser guided air defense systems that are meant to
Mhm.
obviously protect his life. For Russia, I think it's very interesting because I think Russia stands to gain a lot from this war, from the very fact that all of a sudden the U.S. is funneling everything to Israel, not including their own soldiers, right? Like it's not just money anymore. It's not just weapons. Now it's actually boots on the
Black pill.
ground and
Yeah.
everything else that comes alongside that. And Volodymyr Zelensky must be the saddest man in the world today because he's
Yes.
just as forgotten as yesterday's handkerchief, right? It's just like you're done. Bye. So I feel Russia is just kind of waiting for that opportunity, right? Because at the end of the day, Trump's promises of bringing peace turned out to be exactly what many of us expected. The man is a snake oil salesman, and he has at this point sacrificed a large chunk of his base just so that he can continue fueling the genocide in Gaza.
Yeah. That's the black pill, as Mark would say. It's like, for all these people who think that there's this kind of close relationship between Russia and Iran, maybe there is, but Russia has bear the brunt of empire for 3 years,
Mhm.
and they have had to take their respect at the barrel of a gun, and they've done so.
Yeah.
The moment that this happened, Zelensky was screaming in the void. Nobody paid attention. Like, meaning I see what is happening on the ground because I pay attention to it and listen, watching Telegram channels and stuff like that. They are getting trashed. Like some of those attacks that Israel has been taking, like from from Iran, looks like that in Ukraine. Like they're hitting Kiev with Kimzal missiles. I mean, those things are just terrifying weapons. And nobody cares. Nobody seems to be paying attention. And you don't even see it like in the headlines per se. All of the headlines are effectively taking place about the Middle East.
Mhm.
So yeah, they dropped him like a hot potato. Like Mark said, always be aware of the mistress versus the wife. And don't mistake which is which.
Don't mistake your role. Yeah.
Yeah, don't mistake your role. And he is learning that the hard way. Yeah, okay. So if that is indeed true, and that is indeed the way this is going to process, where this is the black pill, Russia is like, all right, thank God. We have space. Iran is going to have to take the brunt of this for a while. China is going to give them support. I would imagine Russia is going to give them support. They just signed the strategic partnership, amazingly, that just got ratified by the parliament of Iran. What do you think their issue? DD geopolitics. One of the things they pointed out with that shocked the hell out of me, it was something that Dugan said. And I was like, okay, maybe Dugan is getting this wrong. I don't think Dugan got it wrong. So this came out, and I want to get your take on why Iran is taking this tact for something that clearly was in their best interest. It says apparently the nature of the agreement is different. The Belarus North Korean established partnership relations with Moscow in the number of areas that we did not particularly touch upon. Our country's independence and security, as well as self-reliance, are extremely important. We are not interested in joining any bloc. This is Iran ambassador to Moscow, cited by TASS. So you're getting a lot of people who are saying, why isn't Russia doing more? Why isn't China doing more? Oh my God, why aren't these countries abandoning Iran? And I even sent Mark a message like, hey, dude, you realize if Russia is not being a little bit more vocal, they're going to lose friends. so even I'm guilty of
Yeah.
a tiny bit of that. Their point is, though, that look, they didn't want that. Like they didn't want that type of relationship. Even if Russia offered it, maybe Russia even did offer it, they didn't want that type of relationship of being closer together. They wanted to be an independent entity left to their own devices. And so you're getting people out of Russia and China saying, this is what it looks like to be an independent entity left to your own devices.
Exactly.
Give me your take on that. I mean, why? I guess the question becomes why? Certainly they knew they were in a rough neighborhood. They also knew they didn't have nukes. What is going on in their minds of this leadership? Is it malfeasance, incompetence? Like, what is it that allowed them to trust America, for one, to get lulled into a sense of insecurity? I mean, in the first place.
Yeah.
But what is it going on with this government?
Well, I think what we're seeing right now in the sense of the partnership between Israel and Russia is kind of and Iran is also this kind of repeat of what we saw on October 7th, right? Remember, Hamas launches their attack, and then 24 hours later, only Hezbollah joins the attack and in a support capacity. And many ask the question, why didn't everyone join the attack? If Hezbollah and Hamas are essentially, the reason for existing is the Israeli occupation itself. And Yemen, has even in their flag of Ansar Allah, they have death to Israel. And Iran, which has been the biggest backer of all of these members of the Axis, many people raise this question, in particular, in Lebanon, like, why didn't everyone join? Like, if you caught them with your pants down, you just go full on and let's finish this thing. Let's get rid of this occupation entity. Then it happened with Syria too, right? Remember Syria? Right. We had this offensive that was approaching Damascus, and at no point did the Syrian government ask for support from the Iranians, even though the Iranians were there, like offering to help stop this. The Russians, the same. Although the Russians, they were saying they were launching airstrikes, but then we kept hearing that the airstrikes were essentially hitting empty fields, that we're just doing this for show.
Can I intrude just for 1 second? One of my guests pointed out, it was Kavor Almasian, the one who runs Syrian Analysis. He pointed out that Iran wanted Syria to launch an attack on Israel. And when Syria was like, well, wait a minute, are you going to help me with this? We've been under sanctions for God knows how long. They were like, no. And then when Syria wouldn't do it, Iran withdrew oil assistance, putting the country in even a worst case scenario.
Oh, wow.
So he is saying, again, I can't confirm this, right? But he's saying that ultimately that they wanted them to do this on their own, which made no sense. I don't, so sometimes Middle Eastern politics is confusing to me.
Yeah.
But go ahead, please continue. I just wanted to point that out because that's his case. That's
it's
the argument.
Very interesting. I hadn't heard that, but it tracks. It makes sense, especially given the way that.
Why does that make sense?
Well, to me, it makes sense in just the way the Syrian government just kind of did nothing, right? When Giuliani and his band of thugs were advancing on Damascus, it would appear, right? Like we all expected something to happen, but neither the army nor the Iranians nor the Russians really did much. So, well, having said that, I think what we're seeing now with the partnership between Russia, Iran, China, it's kind of a similar situation, right? In which the conflict, or well, the war currently only encompasses directly Iran and Israel, right? Although Israel has the support, the material, logistical, etc., from the U.S., etc. So there's really no reason, right, for these bigger powers to join. At the end of the day, the axis of multipolarity has not really sought war. They have not really, they're not the ones here championing expanding wars. They want to stop wars, right? That's why Iran was sitting at the diplomatic table. That's why China brokers the Saudi rapprochement. That's why, even the defense agreement that Iran signed with Russia, it doesn't call for cooperation in battle, military, right? It only calls for military non-involvement against the party that is being attacked. So Russia, for example, according to the agreement, couldn't join the US and Israel in attacking Iran. That's essentially like one of the main things of this agreement, but it doesn't say if Iran gets attacked, like I think North Korea and Russia do have that agreement, right? That if either one gets attacked, the other one kind of comes to their defense. Iran doesn't have that. And why with this government, this is, don't forget that this is a quote unquote reformist government at the end of the day, the Pezeshkian government in Iran. This is a government that came to be after the death, of Ibrahim Raisi, who, very suspicious death, mind you, but nevertheless, I feel like if he had been alive, if he had been president, it would have been a completely different thing. It would have been a completely different situation from the fall of Syria. From the fall of Syria on to today, I think we would have seen a different Iran taking different decisions. I think they would have taken a much more leading role in this whole situation. And I don't think they would have sat down with the US at the negotiating table. I don't think they would have trusted the US in the level that the Pezeshkian government did. Remember, they didn't just kill Raisi, then they killed Amir Abdullahian,
Yes.
the foreign minister, who was, a brilliant diplomat and who was one of the people in charge of the Vienna talks between 2021 and 2022 when they were trying to salvage the original nuclear deal. So all of a sudden, you have entirely new authorities, which with a different perspective of the world. Although it is worth noting that the Pezeshkian government has continued with Raisi's policy, or the Look East policy, right, of building alliances and etc. But at the end of the day, you're not the same person, and you don't, you don't have the same outlook and everything else, right? So I think if we ever see Russia and China involved in this war, it's going to take a lot more than just
Right.
like the U.S. entering Iran. Even that, I would think. I don't foresee that, because at the end of the day, Jamal, Russia and China, they don't want to stop the relationships with Israel. They don't want to. They have at no point shown that they are, they haven't expelled a single ambassador. They haven't even, like they are really just standing on the sidelines, being like, trying to for all of this to pass them by. And in the case of Russia, you have a good excuse. You are at war. In the case of China, and I guess you're just so geographically away from all of this that you can simply be like, "Hey guys, this is really not my problem."
Esteban Carrillo, thank you for this, man. I would love to delve more into that, but I'm hitting my time thing.
Thank you.
Yes, I would love to delve more into that. Thank you for that, man. I really appreciate it. Esteban Carrillo, he's an Ecuadorian journalist currently writing for The Cradle. Again, a fantastic outlet. Check them out. I see them online all the time, especially on Twitter. Their stories are fantastic. So you guys do fantastic work, man.
Thank you so much, Emerald. Thank you so much. And we'll talk next time. Okay.
You have a good one. Be safe.